an ambush.
Oh my God, it's an ambush!
It's an ambush!
Of course!
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a rant review of Department Q on Netflix. I watched this series over the last week or so. It's the hot stuff over on Netflix. I think it's in its number one slot of new series. And, I went into it with some... I had no idea. I had no expectations. I hadn't heard anything about it. I recognized the main actor, Matthew Good, as Ozymandias from The Watchmen. Other than that, not a clue. But it's Scottish, and it's trying to be something that doesn't succeed in doing, as far as I'm concerned. But I'll get to that momentarily and at length. Before then, who's joining me on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon? Shady Grin, good afternoon. Miranda Stone is here. Everybody, if you don't know about Miranda Stone, well, let me tell you. Let's see, as Miranda Stone is here. Mike Savage, Blarg, Keldrig, hello. Matt Barnes, good afternoon. Angelverse, hello. Robert Pincus, hello. The Luke Skywalker 2, is this related to House? Well, yes and no. I'll explain momentarily. Let me put it this way. As far as I know, it doesn't take place in the House universe, but it wants to be House after a fashion. Derek LaRue, thank you so much, Derek. Appreciate it. Very generous of you. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Always appreciate your support and generosity, and hope you enjoy the show. Thanks so much. Tack Alpaca, hello. And I think that's everybody I saw. Did I miss anybody? I hope I didn't. If I did, let me know you're here, and I'll say hello as I'm able. All right, so, misinformation. I read it was based on a Danish series. That could be so. I know nothing about it. So let me say at the outset, first and foremost, this will not be a... I'll give my capsule... If you haven't watched the series and you want to watch the series without any spoilers, I'll give a brief, spoiler-free review in a moment. Outside of that, I do not know anything about its origins. I don't know if it's based on a book. I don't know if it's based on another series. I have no foreknowledge of whatever source material it comes from. I have the show as it sits. So if the book is better or the Danish version is better, good for them. I take it only as I saw it on this version. So I imagine this was based on something else. Feels like it. But as far as my capsule review, the acting is very good. The mystery they build is intriguing to a certain extent. I love a Scottish accent because I have Scott in my... well, not in my basement or something, but in my lineage. So I'm always curious about Scottish accents and Scottish culture and things. And there's some of that woven in here, and I'm sure a native could probably spot things that I just went over my head. It tries really hard to be better than it is. Would I recommend it? Sure. If only because the performances in some instances are really, really good. There's a couple of character dynamics that I was really impressed by, and I wish they had gone more into. I'm hesitant to say what, because again, I don't want to give any spoilers. But take it in pieces and really think about the information they're laying out in front of you, and take pause and ask yourself, what would I do? Because that's what I was doing throughout this entire show, because I'm a nitpicker, if you didn't already know. I have a very picky, snobbish, logical, methodical sort of mind when it comes to things like this. And I've been around the block more than a few times on mystery shows and things since I was a little kid. And there were a few things in here that defied credulity. And whenever that happens in a mystery show, or a show where I'm supposed to believe that the characters I'm observing are smarter than I am, or more observant than I am, it takes me completely out of the moment and kind of ruins it. I don't know if that was much of a review, but either way, from this point forward, there will be nothing but spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, if you want to watch this beforehand and then come back and assess my critiques, that is the safer path for you. Otherwise, Scanner Daffley, hello. What up, peoples? Otherwise, here we go. Okay, so I have taken some notes because this is a very convoluted show. It has a lot of characters. It has a lot going on, but it has two main plot threads. It has a case that is not solved by the end of the series, and there's a case that is solved by the end of the series. The case that is not solved is sort of the looming shadow over our main character and his associates over the course of the first season. I assume there's going to be more seasons. And then there's the mainline case that they're following as investigators. So I'm going to focus on one case at a time, looking at the things about the case that we know or were told, and the things that I noticed and fell apart for me as far as making it feel believable. Along the way, I'll be giving little profiles of each character as they become relevant, and yeah, so it's kind of a mess because the whole show is very convoluted. It tries to hide behind its convolution to appear smarter than it is in places. Anyway, Keeverdam, good afternoon, and thank you, Keeverdam, so much. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone in Scribbles. Hi, Keeverdam. I took the liberties of putting a fundraiser at the top of the chat box. And I should talk about that before I go. At the top of the chat box, guys, there's a link to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society donation page. Please take a look at that when you have the opportunity. If you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share that out on social media, that would be appreciated as well. Also, in case you care, and some people do, the community top score thing is going live. Is live right now. So the more that you interact, the more XP you earn. The more XP you earn, you get up on the leaderboard. Right now, at number 1 place is Mike R. Number 2, Luke Skywalker 2. And at number 3, Attack Alpaca. Close behind Attack Alpaca is Matt Barnes and Misinformation. I'll be checking in on that later, I guess, if you guys care about that. All right, so why do I call this House PD? Well, it has a very similar structure in characters and dynamics. Most especially our main character, Detective Carl Morc. Yes, Morc. Carl Morc. Let's just go through the first case. I'm going to call case number 1, the shooting of Morc and Hardy. Not Mork and Mindy, Morc and Hardy. Okay, so Morc and Hardy. Let me actually show you a picture of the two of them so you have some reference for that. I should also probably put that over here so I can come back to it later. Yes, I have slides. I have slides, everyone. Okay, so Morc and Hardy. Up front in the foreground is Detective Morc, and the back is Hardy. They are partners. They are partners as detectives in, I don't even know what town they're in, but they're in Scotland somewhere, I guess. As the show opens, we find them at the scene of a crime. Now, they were just minding their own business. They weren't even called to this scene. They were just driving by, saw a police car set up, and they were curious. And so they walked up to a little house on the street. And there at the door is standing a regular old patrol officer. Patrol officer Andrews or Anderson or something. It started with an A. I'll say Andrews for the sake of argument. And Patrolman Andrews says, well, he got a call from the daughter of the occupant in the house, trying to do a wellness check, because she hadn't heard from him in a while. And so he checked, and inside, the gentleman in question was in his house with a knife in his head and decidedly dead. And so now Patrolman Andrews was waiting outside for forensics to show up or the other police to show up. So it was just happenstance that Morc and Hardy happened to roll up on this scene. And Morc and Hardy think, fairly high of themselves, Morc in particular. And so they're going to go take a look at the scene and sort of assess it. They might as well, they're here, and so on. And so Morc goes through the motions of sort of chiding Patrolman Andrews, asking him, how long you been on the force? Oh, about 3 months. And did you do this? Did you do that? Did you check this? Did you check that? And he's all kind of nervous. And Morc is a jerk. He's a stuck-up, self-centered jerk. Hardy is a bit more even-tempered, but they both share sort of a camaraderie and a humor that tells you that they know each other very well and are kind of brotherly in that regard. Anyway, so they walk into the house, and sure enough, there is a, say, middle-aged man or so sitting in his chair in the front room of the house with a knife in his head, and he's decidedly deceased. And they're looking around, and Morc still sort of chides the patrolman, don't touch anything, did you check this, did you check that? And he's like, oh, I just got here and I didn't touch anything because I didn't want to mess anything up for the forensics or whatever. And, Morc is practically rolling his eyes at this kid, and finally says, just go wait outside. And so the patrolman turns to walk back outside, but as he approaches the door, it's a setup where you kind of go kitchen, front entryway, living room. And so the dead body's in the living room, the cop is proceeding towards the front door, and out from just the side of the partition next to the kitchen, out steps a masked individual with a gun who immediately shoots Patrolman Andrews in the face and then proceeds to shoot once or twice at Morc and Hardy. Everybody falls to the ground. And the masked individual goes and takes a moment to stand over Morc in particular and look down at him, and then the shooter disappears. Then we black out. Fade to black. Okay. So, that is the scene as we see it in the beginning. We jump ahead for the sake of argument, for the sake of this case. And again, I'm just focusing on this case to begin with because there's the sort of the case that carries through the entire season, but this is the Morc Hardy shooting is its own thing. We jump ahead. I think it was something like 5 or 6 months. It was at least several months. And where the show really begins is Morc coming back to the department on his first day back from recuperation, because Morc was shot through the neck. It missed all the vital stuff. It only took out a tooth, as far as I can tell, but it did leave bullet scars on 2 sides of his neck. Hardy, on the other hand, he was less fortunate. The shot nicked his spine and his spinal cord, and he ended up becoming a paraplegic, still in the hospital. And so that's the aftermath. Now, Morc is still suffering from PTSD, and he has an injury, and he's very crabby. And as soon as I saw this, I thought, oh, okay, this is House MD, or House PD, as I said, because he's going to be the crabby, irascible, injured, slightly traumatized leader of whatever, but also a brilliant detective. The brilliant detective part is where everything kind of falls apart, but we'll get there. Anyway, so Morc shows up. Everybody's kind of surprised to see him there. His boss, Moira, and I have a picture of her for reference. Let me put her up. This might be a very small picture. I think I can zoom in on it a little bit. Moira is there, and Moira is, your sassy Scottish lady. She's a sassy Scottish lady, and she's in charge of the whole department. And she's like, are you sure you should be back? And he gives her a whole bunch of crap. And I don't know if you're ready for this. And he's like, I'm ready for this. And so Morc is going to try to move back into being a detective. Around that same time, some officials from high above in the Scotland Yard or something, or the politics of things, they visit Moira and they say, hey, we want you to do some more work in cold cases and such, and we're going to give you a big budget to open up a new department, and fully funded, so we need some good PR. And Moira's like, okay, hey, Morc, you want to head up this new department? And he's like, do I have a choice? He's like, no. And so she sends him down to the unused basement, shower storage, used to be a bathroom or a group bathroom. It's a nasty basement little place. Of course, it's like their secret hideout that'll turn into, the special Department Q thing. And it's called Department Q because it has, on the door, it says something like storage quarters or something. And the Q in quarters is really big and just happens to be the one letter, not completely obliterated by time. And so all of a sudden, the department upstairs, the main level, starts getting all these new computers and all this new equipment. And Department Q downstairs doesn't get anything. And Morc's like, when do I get my budget? And she's like, oh, I'll get you some computers or stuff. Moira is effectively embezzling the funding for this new department to enrich herself. She even puts a new TV in her office, the whole 9 yards. So Moira's corrupt. Maybe, as far as we know so far, maybe not criminally corrupt, I guess. It's just sort of a ledger type thing, but she's taking all the money for this other department that the guys wanted and keeping it for herself, and Morc gets nothing. Morc, however, is awarded a very ambitious IT guy named Akram. Akram is the guy here in the picture on the far right. And he is formerly of Syria, has a kind of mysterious background in law enforcement or something, and he's very polite, very proper, very observant. He obviously has some investigative skills and background, but he is currently just working IT, and he wants to move up in the world, so he becomes Morc's assistant. Now, one thing I want to say is that nearly every British cop or detective show I've watched recently, or that involved police, like Adolescence, why do all the cops dress like homeless people? Akram dresses in a suit every day that he's at work. Morc dresses like he is going home to a cardboard box in an alley all the time. You ever watch The First 48 or any sort of reality show that deals with homicide detectives or anything? You ever see those guys dressing like they don't belong to an authoritative organization? They're not at least business casual, if not in full suits, depending on the climate. I really hate the homeless bum look for some of these detectives. You can't be Columbo. There's only one Columbo. You are not Columbo. Anyway, so all this is going on, and while Morc has been away, a different team has been assigned to solve the case of not only the murdered patrol officer, but obviously the shooting and the maiming of two of their lead detectives. And this team consists of three people whose names I never learned, except for the fact that it's one elder detective and two junior detectives, each of which has the most amazing haircut one to the other. One is a guy with a mullet that would put Billy Ray Cyrus to shame, and the other one is a girl with a platinum blonde bleached coiffure that looks like something out of Millennium, if you ever saw the sci-fi movie Millennium. But anyway, they've been working the case of who shot and killed the patrol officer and who shot the two detectives. Now, here's where I was at this point in the show and when they started focusing on the case of the shooting of Morc and Hardy. I was thinking about the circumstances that I witnessed at the beginning of the first episode. And I thought to myself, well, wait a second. Okay, so the patrol officer, as he had said, unless he was lying, of course, as he said, he was standing outside the home of the dead man who had had the welfare check called on him by his daughter the entire time, even before the detective showed up. So he was there for a significant period of time, which means that the shooter was already in the house before the detective showed up. The shooter was lying in wait. Now, Morc and Hardy's arrival to the scene, as they said and as was depicted, was completely by chance. They were just driving by and happened to see the police car outside and were curious as to what was going on. It's not their usual route. They're not patrol officers. They were just going by. So someone clad in all black with a balaclava on and a gun and lying in wait in a house where a dead body already was, it was a targeted hit. But who could they be targeting? I thought. They couldn't be targeting Hardy and Morc because they wouldn't have known they were coming. And the only person that ended up dead was the patrol officer. So did this person kill this guy in order to bait that patrol officer into coming in the house so they could take out the patrol officer? It's the only thing that made any sense to me. Why else would you go to all this trouble? Or, I guess, did the person lying in wait, did they kill the guy and then they got trapped in the house when the patrol officer showed up and they didn't have a chance to escape? Well, that didn't make any sense either, because it wasn't like this guy just died. and enough time had passed that his daughter had called in for a wellness check. So it's not like the killer was caught almost red-handed. So I thought, okay, well, and since the only person that ended up being killed was the patrol officer, and since Morc and Hardy were both lying there on the floor in the place, and the killer did not take the moment to use 2 extra bullets to eliminate them, then the focus must have been on the patrol officer. That was my first thought. So when we finally have Morc interact with the team that's been assigned to look into his shooting, what are they looking at? Well, they're looking at some surveillance photos from some doorbell cameras and things, and they see that there was a car outside of the place before the shooting. And this car, it had food wrappers and stuff next to its tire. And it was situated in such a way that the car couldn't have rolled up on this stuff and it would be sitting like that. It was put there after the car had already stopped. So the getaway car had been there for some time, but it had also been there before the shooting. But it had been absent just before the shooting. And yet the patrol officer never left the front door. So I'm thinking, okay, well then this was a 2-man job. There was a getaway driver. There was somebody lying in wait. The only person that was killed was the patrol officer. The patrol officer seemingly was the target. If that was his regular route and his regular patrol, then if you called in a wellness check for that particular house at that particular area, you could likely suspect that that patrol officer would respond. And this is all going through my head as they mentioned the one thing that the car was out front. But then I'm like, well, then who called in the welfare check? Because if this is all a setup for the patrol officer, then, you know, they talked to the daughter, right? No. Because Morc has to walk up and ask them, was there a daughter? And I'm sitting here going, wait, this happened, what, 5-6 months ago or something? This didn't just happen yesterday. Morc's wound is all healed. He's obviously been in recuperation for some time. I forget exactly how many months had passed, but some time had passed. And these 3 detectives never followed up on the chain of events that led to the shooting by trying to contact the purported daughter of the first victim. I thought, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense at all. So I thought, okay, well, I can't think of Morc being some kind of genius for pointing that out if the people around him are portrayed as so densely stupid that it's not impressive. And this is kind of how the rest of the show went as far as trying to frame Morc as this Hausian genius who just happens to be a crabapple. And let me talk for a second about the character of Morc. Morc is a arrogant crabapple, but he's not a lovable crabapple like House MD. He's just a cartoonishly asshole-ish jerk to everybody in ways that no one would tolerate. I mean, there are scenes where he treats people in such a way that it's like, I can't even suspend disbelief that he's just a lovable old jerk or something, because you have to at least occasionally show a level of professionalism and self-control that balances out the jerkiness. Like if you ever watched House MD. Yes, he was a sardonic, sarcastic, jokey, sometimes mean jerk, but he also obviously cared about what he was doing and had a level of compassion that exceeded most people. He just hid it. Morc doesn't have that. He's just a jerk for no other reason than just being a jerk. And, you know, you can say, oh, well, I mean, he was shot through the neck. He just had his partner maimed. He's probably in a bad place. No, he was a jerk before he was shot. They showed us that in the first scene. He didn't have some kind of like strange downfall into this mood that he was in, both in what we saw and references to how he behaved prior to all this. He was just a jerk. So anyway, it's eventually discovered, because again, it's only been several months since the shooting occurred. It's eventually discovered that the guy with the knife in his head happened to be a confidential informant for the police. Like, oh, well, it's nice that we suddenly find that out 6 months after the fact, and there were 3 detectives on this. And did the detectives do anything for these 6 months? Because the way that Morc walks in on this, with these guys looking at this board with all these photos of what they know about the thing, it sure feels as like nobody did anything. Like time just stopped on this investigation before Morc walked in the room. And then suddenly Morc makes all these observations and asks these questions. And that's supposed to make me feel as though he's some genius observant detective or something. Except, as I say, it doesn't help when you can't even rely on the competence, the measured, leveled competence of the detectives that he's supposed to be trouncing. The way that House worked so well is that the people around House, all of them in their own way, were competent. They didn't always get it right, and they were certainly junior in experience to House, but they were competent. They weren't morons all the time. Even the characters that didn't last very long for various reasons at least had their moments to shine. And House, while being brilliant at solving a problem, often got things wrong because he was working through the puzzle. And you could see him do that. So he wasn't a Gary Stu. He had his faults. He didn't always get it right, but he always found the answer, or the answer always found him. In this case, the people around Morc, at least initially, aren't anybody that you can think of as competent. So there's nothing to be impressed by. Pointing out the obvious to an idiot doesn't make you a genius. So anyway, this is the shooting of Morc and Hardy. And that's everything that I've just given you is about all that we learn about this case throughout the 8 or 9 episodes of this season. Because that story, for some reason, does take a back seat. Even though you'd think that the death of a police officer and the maiming of one and the almost killing the other one, you'd think that'd be a high priority. But not so much, apparently. Because you've got these 3 junior grade idiots that don't know what they're doing. And except for the fact that it happened, and we see the aftermath of it, it doesn't really become that big of a deal over the course of the show. Now, there are some theories as to who the shooter was, based on the eyes, because the shooter we see in both the first episode and in flashbacks to the event, you do see the eyes of the shooter. And I had a suspect in my mind until a friend of mine named a different suspect. And I really have to wonder, did the makers of the show take different characters or actors that we'd seen and put them in the mask and sort of mess with the memories of Morc to also mess with the audience? I don't know. But as far as like who did it, why they did it, and so on, it's never really explored much more than that. Except to come to the conclusion that there were likely 2 people involved and that the patrol officer was likely the target and that Morc and Hardy were just bystanders. Unexpected bystanders. So that's, as far as we know by the end of the first season, the shooting of Morc and Hardy. Now, the main story, the main event is coming up, but I want to make sure I check in on you guys. So what's going on over in the chat? I've been so focused on giving my recitation of events here. Latino Slant, you clothing elitist. Hey, I tell you what, I want to see homicide detectives at least partially dressed professionally. Even Lenny Briscoe, as sloppy as he could show up at times, he always wore a suit. Okay? I want to see homicide detectives exude at least the barest sense of authority. You don't do that when you look like you're traveling with the Grateful Dead as a roadie. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Let's see. Juliet, only one Columbo and Kojak. It's true. It's true. You can only get away with a Columbo once, and Kojak, yeah, can't replicate. They were trying to make House here. It didn't work. Juliet, good movie, Millennium was. Well, it was an interesting movie. If you guys don't know about Millennium, well, Chris Christopherson and, what's her name? I suddenly forget the female lead. I'll know her name when I hear it. Yeah, they stealing people from plane crashes before they crash in order to populate a future where the human race is dwindling. Time travel. Massive kidnapping. It's great. It's great. Rent American, wouldn't that be a conflict of interest to investigate your own shooting? Well, it would be, and that's why they don't have Morc investigating it. They have this, in the middle of the department main floor, they have a giant board, not off in a different room somewhere, but they have a giant board full of the photographs and bits and pieces of evidence dealing with the shooting. And Morc just happens to walk up on these three guys as they're huddled around this board, making observations about things, and, just kind of saying stuff. And trouncing them on simple observations or conclusions that I made before I even heard it from the characters' mouths. So, yeah. Let's see. It was all a dream. I hope they don't pull that. That'd make me unhappy. Are you sure the shooter wasn't Morc? I am sure the shooter wasn't Morc. If I'll at least take the show at its word that the events we saw at the first episode depict that a unknown assailant shot the three of them and then ran away. So, yeah. What else? Anybody else? Dun, dun, dun! Shermork Holmes. Yeah. Colonel Mustard? Could have been. I mean, at this rate, I wouldn't be surprised. Cheryl Ladd. Was that Cheryl Ladd? Chris Christopherson and Cheryl Ladd? Yeah. Oh, man. Millennium. This is before Lance Hendrickson got a hold of the name. Luke Skywalker, this is the second chat in a row where everyone has 75 XP or less. Well, I guess you guys better be working. I don't know. I don't know what counts for XP. I honestly don't. They tell me it's chats, interactions, activity. They also say super chats, but I'm hesitant to encourage that because I don't think there's any point in paying to win for this. Unless you're very excited to, I suppose. All right. So now comes the more convoluted of the cases. This is the main line. This is, would you say, the A story of the season. And this is called The Disappearance of Merritt Lingard. Okay. And she's called Merritt, by the way. No DEI here. She got there by Merritt. Okay, so who's Merritt Lingard? Merritt Lingard, some backstory that'll save you about 2 or 3 episodes worth of waiting. She is a prosecutor for the Crown in Scotland, so she's a DA in the American lingo. She has a brother, an adult brother, younger than her, just slightly, who is, I believe, younger, who experienced a traumatic attack when he was a teenager that left him with brain damage, and he's basically incommunicative. So he's got severe communication issues, he doesn't talk, lots of problems, needs constant care. In her youth, she was kind of a troubled child. She had a tumultuous relationship with her father. She had a boyfriend named Harry Jennings, and Harry Jennings had a brother named Lyle. And she and Harry were sort of like trying to dream their way out of this town, etc., when they were teenagers and so on. And she didn't like her dad so much. And so she... I'll get to that later. I'll at least save that for later. Anyway, so that's the setup for Merritt's background. But she's a Crown prosecutor. And when we start out the show, we find out that she is prosecuting a guy named Graham Finch. Graham Finch for the murder of his wife. He is purportedly having to thrown her down the stairs and killed her after years of spousal abuse. And Graham Finch ends up on the stand testifying his own defense, and Merritt attempts to take him down on the stand. And instead, she opens the door for him to lay out a sob story, and is unfortunate to, he gets off. He does not get convicted. Oh my gosh. Doesn't get convicted. And so she fails at that case, and she feels very depressed about this. And she decides that she feels down enough, she's going to try to travel to see her father and try to mend fences, which goes, you have to take a ferry across the way and everything. Anyway, so she goes and picks up her brother, and they're going to take a ferry ride off to their old hometown. Well, in the course of this ferry ride, her brother, I think his name was William. I'll just say William for the sake of argument. William throws a bit of a fit. He's obviously out of control. He's outside of his usual environment. He ends up pushing his sister down quite violently, hitting her and knocking her down. This is witnessed by several people. And Merritt, frustrated and angry, decides to get some distance between her and her brother, and she leaves him on the upper deck and she kind of wanders off. And then she disappears, vanishes right there. And she has not been seen by the time the show begins for 4 years. And so, it's like, did she jump off the ferry? Was she, feeling self-destructive? Did something happen to her? Where did she go? Because she never got off the ferry. And the cameras never picked up anything, so they don't know. Well, we know as the audience that prior to this disappearance, she'd been getting threatening texts from some unknown number. And there was some indication that she might be stalked. So, back at Department Q, Akram, the studious, industrious, knows more than he lets on assistant, he's being the reasonable one in trying to get the department started, and he picks out this case. He happens to pick out this case as their first cold case to review, and so they get working on it. And so they go over the facts of the case. Well, let's see. Who could the suspects be? Well, the first obvious suspect is possibly the guy that she tried to put in jail previous to her disappearance, the Graham Finch guy. And Graham Finch, well, he's a very powerful guy. His family owns this big shipping concern, and he's got a lot of money, he's got a lot of influence, and so maybe, just maybe, he had something to do with it. And so we're kind of like, okay, maybe. So they start staking out Graham Finch's place. At the same time, the only witness that they have that might know something is, of course, a brain-damaged brother of hers, who is now being taken care of at a special institute where a lady that runs the place is now his legal guardian. And so now there's some suspicion like, oh, well, if Merritt is declared dead, given her estate and everything else, where does all her money go? Because she was a very successful prosecutor, and I guess she'd come across some money elsewhere or something. So is this for money? Did someone take out Merritt to wait until, she quote unquote died, and then the estate passes on to this guy, and then his caretaker ends up, embezzling all the money? Oh my gosh, so many suspects. And the brother, when they finally get around to talking to him or trying to talk to him, he's been spending the last 4 years just kind of stuck in that same moment where his sister disappeared. And he keeps drawing this same thing over and over again. It's this circle with like a bird in the middle of the circle, a very distinctive bird, a cormorant, we find out in short order. And my first thought, and I know this is going to be a stretch, my first thought was, oh, dear Lord, they are not going to pull the same thing they did in The Cell, are they? Now, if you guys don't know, there's a movie from the 90s called The Cell. It starred Vincent D'Onofrio and Jennifer Lopez. It is a very, very visually amazing movie. That's about all it has going for it. It's a visually amazing movie, but it also tries to pretend at points to be a kind of a murder mystery. In fact, there are elements of The Cell, that movie, that are so similar to elements of this show, I really, really wonder if there wasn't some borrowing going on. I will get to more about The Cell momentarily. Anyway, so they're trying to figure out, okay, who could have wanted Merritt out of the way? Who would have a motive? Did Graham Finch have a motive in revenge for being humiliated on the stand and trying to put him in jail? Does the caretaker of her brother have a motive on a financial level to try to make her disappear so that she can take all the money? Well, somewhere in like the first or second episode, we find out that Merritt is alive. Oh my gosh, Merritt is alive and being kept captive in a metal tank a metal compression tank. The kind of tank you'd put somebody into after they've gone to deep depths in order to prevent the bends. Right? And she's been kept in this thing purportedly for 4 years. And she's just an absolute wretch. She's emaciated. She's watched 24/7 on cameras built into the walls. She has to shower in front of these guys, whoever they are. She's being fed food occasionally. She's being kept alive. And the entire time, she has no idea who's done this to her or why. All she hears is electronically distorted voice occasionally tormenting her, and terrible like rock music being pumped into the place to keep her awake and mess with her mind and everything. But so she's been kept in captivity for 4 years. Oh my gosh. Big mystery. Okay, who did and why? Who did and why? Well, Merritt is trying to figure that out too. She keeps trying to recall, like, who could she have wronged? Who could have done this? Somebody's going to all this trouble for a reason. And she's reviewing, and even the voice is trying to tempt her and tease her about the fact they have no idea, that she has no idea why she's there or what she did. And so over the course of the season, we see Merritt Lingard go over every name of every client she's ever had, everyone she's ever prosecuted, every witness she ever had to cross-examine. She has a crayon that she's writing names and taking notes on the inside walls of this tank, trying to say whatever magic words are going to placate the people that have her captive. For 4 years. Oh my gosh. Let me get back to The Cell now. If you didn't see The Cell, spoiler alert, part of the plot of The Cell is that our insane serial killer guy, what he does is he captures innocent victims, puts them into a cell where he holds them captive and basically tortures them through, teasing of what's going on and what their fate is and everything. And kind of gets his jollies off of that. It's not for anything personal. He just kind of grabs people for the sake of, I think they resemble somebody or something. But anyway, so yeah, that movie also had a plot line of a captive female in a confined cell hidden somewhere that nobody could find them. And here's the major plot point. And this is why I thought of The Cell as soon as I saw what the brother was drawing. I was like, well, hey, he keeps drawing that symbol. He keeps drawing that logo. It seems to be the one thing he is focused on over and over and over again in his pictures whenever his sister comes up and dealing with her possibly. So if I were a detective, and I had a missing person, and I had one witness whose only communication skill was sketching things out, and they kept sketching the same thing over and over again, what might I do? I might say, hey, Detective Muckety Muck, can we see if we can match this logo to any local businesses or products? Because in The Cell, what happened in The Cell? Well, there was a particular symbol that showed up very early on in the movie. And no thought was given to this symbol until near the end of the movie when, without any extra underlining, that symbol shows up again and the detective goes, wait a second. Does that symbol mean something significant? Could it be the logo of a business or a product? And of course, the symbol that he sees in the movie is the trademark logo of the company owned by the serial killer's family and the properties where he is holding his captives in the cells. And of course, that leap of amazing logic, I know, could have happened at the beginning of the movie, but then you'd have no movie. That same leap of logic, could have happened in a show that is trying to pretend to be a smart and insightful detective show, but it doesn't happen. When it finally clicks? When the symbol, the very distinctive circle symbol with a cormorant in it, when that finally clicks? The last episode. I am not kidding you. It is not made relevant to the characters until they see it on a banner at the crime scene before they've actually figured out what was going on. They didn't do any research. They showed up and they saw the thing. Oh, wait, that's the same symbol. And I'm sitting there and I'm yelling at the screen. Of course it is, you idiots. Of course it is. You could have figured this out 7 episodes ago. But no, we can't have nice things in our detective show. We can't have detectives acting like intelligent individuals. No. We have to stretch things out through manufactured incompetence. Because this series has to be 9 or 10 episodes long. It can't be 4 episodes long. No. We can't have a series, a British series, mind you, that's only 4 episodes long. That would be blasphemy. No. We have to find ways to make everything take a hell of a lot longer than it needs to. Because there are no British series that are hailed as classics that only had 3 or 4 episodes. As we know. So anyway, as the show goes on, we have Merritt, as I said, Merritt Lingard is trapped in this tank, and she is trying to figure out who could have done this. She goes over every client, every witness, everything in the world. Can't figure it out. For 4 years, she's been doing this. In the course of flashbacks, we find out that Merritt Lingard, prior to the Graham Finch case taking off, had a possible witness to the Graham Finch case. And this possible witness, or this possible whatever, unfortunately, this person was already in jail, and she was a known criminal, and so her credibility was kind of off. And Merritt wasn't sure whether or not she wasn't just saying something to try to get out of jail. And this witness, I forget what her name was. I'll call her Angela for the sake of clarity, because I can't think of a better name right now. Or was it Christy or something? Anyway, this witness, somehow her name gets back to forces at hand, and somebody tries to kill her in prison. Tries to kill this witness. Problem is, only a few people knew that this witness existed. Merritt and Merritt's direct superior. So, how did the people who found out that she was a witness to try to silence her find out that she was a witness if it wasn't Merritt or her direct superior? Oh, because it was her direct superior. This Burns guy, he is like, also, I love the fact how in 2 different mystery series I've covered now on my channel, The Fall and now this, Department Q, some skunk in the plot line had the last name of Burns. I don't know if that's like a tradition or something in British detective shows, but anyway, so this guy, what happened to him? Well, see, what happened was, Graham Finch hired some guys to run Burns' daughter off the road as a threat against her life. And so Burns, in order to placate the people threatening his family, decided to pass information on to Graham Finch to try to placate him, and also kind of rigged the trial so that there wouldn't be any witnesses. And so Graham Finch got, was found not guilty, in part because Burns gave in to the extortion. Yeah. And over the course of the show, Morc and Akram, they figured this out. They actually do some detecting and put 2 and 2 together, and they let Burns know that they know what he may have done. All right, so that happened. But it becomes clear fairly quickly that Graham Finch didn't do this. It just doesn't line up. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it also doesn't make a whole lot of sense that the caretaker of the brother did this. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, during the time prior to the Graham Finch trial, Merritt had been seeing a reporter, not just for the sake of background investigation and so on, but it became romantic. Very romantic. And This reporter, it turns out, also mysteriously died just before Merritt disappeared. He was a climber and he fell off a cliff and died. Oh my gosh. So it's like, what does that have to do with this? It's also convoluted, so convoluted. All right. I will try to run through this because there's not much left to say, because once you get the quote-unquote solution, it doesn't make any sense. So the circumstances surrounding the brain damage of her brother is released to us in drips and drabs over the course of the season. And what it turns out is, the mainline story is, her boyfriend at the time, Harry Jennings, attempted to rob her father, Merritt's father, and in the course of this ended up striking her brother William over the head, and this is what caused the brain damage. And after doing that, he ran away and ended up jumping off of that same ferry and taking his own life out of guilt. That's the story. Well, the flashbacks reveal that, in fact, Merritt and Harry kind of conspired to rob her father. But she did it in sort of a, I want to say, Lady Macbeth-ish way, where she just kind of suggested it, but was like, nah, that's a bad idea. Never mind I said anything. And it's very ambiguous to me whether or not she was sort of egging him on while also having some deniability or something. Maybe I missed something in that scene, but it sure seemed to me like she was nudge, wink, winking him into robbing her father so they could get some money and run away together. But what really happened was that Harry came to rob the place. William showed up and caught him doing it. And it wasn't it wasn't Harry that hit William over the head. It was Lyle. Harry's brother hit William over the head, because Lyle is some kind of weird psychopath. And Harry, still feeling guilty about the whole thing, ran away and ended up taking his own life. And then Lyle eventually went off to some hospital for being a Looney Tune, etc. Okay. I only tell you this because here we go. So for 4 years, Merritt Lingard, let me bring her up again real quick, just for reference purposes. So for 4 years, this lady has been stuck in a decompression chamber somewhere, trying to figure out who did this to her, who's doing this to her, why, what's the motivation, who could possibly be doing this to her. She goes through every single witness, every single defendant, every single client, everybody and their brother. She's got names written up, down, and sideways all over inside that tank, making notes, trying to figure out what's going on, who did it, what. And the one thing that she never bothers to bring up, the one circumstance that never occurs to her to mention, just happens to be one of the most significant events in her life, insofar as her family, and that is her brother being hit over the head and turned into a non-communicative practical vegetable. She never brings up Harry Jennings. She never brings up his passing away as a result of trying to rob her father, which she kind of nudged, winked him into doing. And we also find out she saw him leaving the scene at the time, but never said anything. It never occurs to her. And we discover that Lyle and his mother have been keeping Merritt captive this whole time. Oh my God! Oh my God! Vindictive mom and vindictive Lyle. But not only is Lyle keeping her captive, Lyle posed as the reporter that Merritt's been having the affair with. Merritt thinks that Lyle is the reporter. The reporter is just a guy Lyle knew from his background, so when it came down to try to cover all his tracks, he killed the real reporter after taking his place for Merritt before kidnapping Merritt. Oh my gosh, it's so complicated. Okay. First off, we eventually see a flashback to the kidnapping of Merritt off of the ferry. Now, I don't know how many ferries anybody here has ridden before. And I know the third grade joke you're making in your mind right now when I say that phrase, so shame on you. But every time I've been on a ferry, for the most part, unless I absolutely have to, I just stay in the car. I just stay in the car and ride it out because usually it's pretty cold out there. And yeah, maybe you want to take a look at the scenery or something, but that's only good for a minute or three before you get cold and it's noisy and you just want to get in the smells and everything. So you want to get back in the car. Somehow, some way, on this fully loaded ferry, Merritt goes down to the car lane area at the time of her kidnapping and is grabbed from behind, hood put over her face, dragged off to some car trunk and thrown into it, and nobody sees a thing. Nobody sees a thing. Oh, the security cameras didn't catch anything. Well, here's the thing. The workers would have seen something. They couldn't possibly, the kidnappers could not have possibly accounted for the idea that there'd be nobody in those cars waiting for the trip to finish. But somehow, just happens to be perfect timing. No one was watching, no one was present, no workers, no one in their cars, on the boat, kidnapped, lickety-split. Okay, sure, I guess it could happen. I guess it could happen. It's a bit far afield. Secondly, the incident where Harry Jennings lost his life, or took his own life as the case may be, it happened 25 years prior to the events of this show. So, you're telling me that a mother and son who were so psychotically vindictive at this one lady that they blame for the death of their son and their brother respectively, said absolutely nothing for 20 years, made absolutely no moves, no Facebook posts, no nasty letters, no phone calls, no lawsuits, nothing against her for 20 years. And just all of a sudden one day decided, yep, now's the time to do it. And she has absolutely no clue who could be doing this to her because we've been fans. We just got to, you let it sit. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Okay, all right, sure. Sure it is. Yeah, I just don't like it. Anyway, the case, such as it is solved just by happenstance. It's not solved so much by the detectives. It just happens to be conveniently the case that facts and events align themselves at the exact right time for Morc and Akram to show up at the site of the crime scene just at the time where Mom and Lyle have decided to, cut their ties and run away and escape and leave Merritt in a tank that is slowly compressing her into absolute death. So they don't save her by their detective skills. Their detective skills could have saved her 5 episodes earlier if they just said, I think we should look up and see if there are any local businesses or something that has this logo of a cormorant in a circle. And then maybe we could have figured something out. In small part, this show reminded me of another show that's been on recently called From. If you guys have not seen From, I cannot recommend it. It is a mystery box, Lost-like show where the only thing that keeps it going is characters acting dumb and or characters intentionally withholding information from one another when they have absolutely no reason to obscure information in the situation that they're in. But this is what kind of drove this show and required it to be as long as it was. Pieces of information that were just conveniently looked over or dumbed down, looked past, until we all have to come to a conclusion at the end and try to still make it seem smart, except by this time you've built up our characters to be so dunderheaded that it doesn't look smart when they solve it. A few extra notes on some of the characters. I didn't even mention the best part of the show. The best part of the show, as far as I'm concerned, was the relationship between Hardy and Rose. Who is Hardy? Well, again, if you've already forgotten, because I know I would have too, if they hadn't shown him more than a few times, this is Hardy over here. That's the partner who's been laid up, a paraplegic who is slowly rehabilitating. Apparently, he does still have the possibility of regaining the ability to walk, or at least move his legs. And that's carried out through the show. He is one of the best written characters. He comes across as the most intelligent. And he, over the course of the show, mentors Rose, who is a complete junior go-getter. But their relationship at one point made me think of, like, you know, Batman Beyond, where Hardy is the laid-up master detective giving the junior some tips and talking with her about strategy, about how to go talk to this witness, how to approach this, how to approach that. It was actually really impressive. And I thought, man, that's the show I want to watch. I want to watch Hardy and Rose. That'd be a great show. But nah, we can't have nice things. Also, let's talk about Akram for a second. Akram, the mysterious Syrian-born with a mystery past of maybe he was working for Syrian secret police or something. Hard to say. But at one point, Akram and Rose, these two characters here, Akram and Rose, they were paired up to look into a lead in the case. And they went to question a potential witness or suspect. In the conversation these two had just before this scene, Rose talked about how she has some PTSD because she got into an accident several years ago and it left her kind of traumatized. And she can't stand the sight of blood, she said. All right. Well, as they go to question this suspect, Akram ends up throwing this guy, this tough guy, down a flight of stairs in such a way that his femur snaps, the suspect's, as he's laying there on the landing, the bone sticking out of his leg. And in order to get information out of this person, Akram steps on the broken bone to torture this man to get him to answer their questions. Rose simply stands beside and doesn't say anything, doesn't do anything, certainly doesn't faint at the sight of a disgusting wound and tons of blood. Now, the fact that Akram, a non-police officer, otherwise just a civilian employee of the police department, assaulted and tortured a man after severely maiming him, nothing happens to Akram. It's mentioned, he's chided for it, but nothing happens. And then later, in the last episode, Akram warns Morc against breaking down a door without a warrant. And I'm like, dude, you are the last person in the world who has any credibility on lecturing someone else on following proper procedure. Like, what? And in the other department of characters whose corruption really does not endear them to me, this was our coup de grace of the series. After Merritt has been rescued, after everything's been resolved effectively, Morc goes off to see, here, let me pull it up again, just for reference. He goes off to see Burns. And he says to Burns, hey, so, yeah, you know, it'd be a real shame if it got out that you fed a witness to a defendant, put that witness's life under threat where she was almost murdered, had her eye gouged out with a knife, and basically threw a case under, you know, the fact that your daughter was there. It'd be a real shame if that came out. So I'll tell you what, I'm not going to tell anybody that, but you're going to fully fund my department, and I want a new car. And I am not kidding you. This is the conversation that our hero had with this guy at the end of the series. You know, because Graham Finch, he can't be prosecuted again for the murder of his wife. He double jeopardy, can't do that. Now he obviously could be prosecuted for conspiracy to commit murder of this witness, and that witness is still vulnerable because once she's out of jail, she's still a witness. But no, whatever. No, we're going to use this information about this corrupt law enforcement officer, this district attorney for all intents and purposes, having fed a witness to a defendant to be killed in order to save his daughter and give in to extortion. We're going to use that for our own extortion in order to get more money that had already been inappropriately appropriated, mind you, by Morc's boss in the first place. Remember? Like I said, Moira took all of the funding for Morc's department and gave it to herself and her people. Also, Merritt Lingard, when she finally recovered from all of her injuries and everything, she went to the police department. She was under the misunderstanding that it was Moira that made an issue out of her missing persons case, and it was Moira who she has to thank for being rescued, when in fact it was Akram, and only by the barest of associations, Morc. But Moira took the credit for saving this lady's life. So not only did she steal government funds to embezzle for her own department, she also did a stolen valor move on taking credit for rescuing a lady from torture and potential death without giving credit to her own officers. And then Morc, the real angel of this whole thing, then turns around and blackmails Burns for more money and a car. Because his company car, his police car, is kind of trashy. I hated this show. Because I paid attention. You see, it's always the things you put a lot of time and energy to. Because I did the thing I always do with these detective shows. I had to figure out really quick, really early on, am I watching Murder, She Wrote, or am I watching Matlock? Am I watching a show that I, as an audience member, could conceivably contribute to the solving of by being attentive and a good witness and a good audience member? Or is this a Matlock thing where the information's going to be revealed at the 11th hour and there's no possible way I could have figured that out? It was a bit of both, only because the clues they put in front of me, they decided to ignore. Like, I didn't have any idea who Lyle and his mother was before anything started, but I did see that logo and think, gosh, that seems significant. Maybe you should look into it. Nah. That's not worth it. So, there's probably going to be a second season. Because, and here's... last thing. I swear it's the last thing. In the last scene of the show, last episode, they play this very uplifting, chanty music. And they go through the slow kind of movement through the police department and going past all of these characters. And they drum up this sense that we've all been on some kind of journey together, and we've all come to this new place and all this. And they try to generate a sentimentality that these characters and this show have not earned. Morc is a jerk and corrupt. He is a liar and a manipulator. He's not a very good detective, and he treats people like garbage. And so to see him being made the centerpiece of this purported, at the end of the series, sort of uplifting, we've all learned something together kind of sense, it just simply does not work. It does not work. And so yes, Department Q tries to be House PD and fails. And that is my rant, my review. There you go. Anything else, guys, before I wrap this up? Rant American, revenge is a dish best served with fava beans and a nice Chianti. A nice Chianti. Luke Skywalker 2 says, wait, how? Wait, how what? Did the stream die and I just didn't know it? Is there anybody still here? If you're still here, please put something in the chat so I know that I haven't been talking to myself for the last half hour. Which would be really funny if I was. No, we are just bored. Oh, no. Okay, well then, I'm not doing a very good job of being entertaining. I apologize. It's still going. Okay. Well then, guys, apologies for boring you. Yeah. That's my rant review of Department Q. Potential, yes. Execution, eh. And I'm seeing it get a lot of praise for the performances and this, that, and the performances were good in some places. But unfortunately, if you're going to be a detective show, your detectives have to be believable and they have to be admirable as detectives. And these characters, or at least the characters we're supposed to think are not. Like I say, if there was a show of Rose and Hardy, I would have been there. And there was only like 1 or 2 scenes where he's playing mentor to her, junior cub reporter kind of thing. And those are the best scenes of the whole series. I was like, oh, he's brainstorming with her. He's giving her advice. He's being calm. He's being an effective mentor and teacher. He's trying to guide her along. He can't participate himself because he's disabled, but he's doing so remotely. And, that would have been a great show. And probably only needed like 3 or 4 episodes. But anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. I've blabbed enough. So if you had any interest in watching Department Q before, by all means, go ahead. See if you spot anything in it that I didn't. Or maybe I'm wrong about something. Maybe I made an assumption or I missed a piece of information that makes it all work. I don't know. I watched pretty intently. I pay attention. I try to be a good audience member. Just like you guys. You're all good audience members. So just a reminder, tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, Thursday, TED Excellence, where I'll look at another off-brand TED Talk for education and enlightenment. If you'd like a preview of what that TED Talk's going to be about, well, let me show you right now. Once Upon a Masculinity, we're going to learn how fairy tales teach boys and men the wrong lessons about masculinity. Can you imagine what those are? I can. Will our speaker say the same things? I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow on TED Excellence. Also, Friday, not only will I be on, unless something happens, I'll be on the morning show for Midnight's Edge in the morning. We'll talk about movies and entertainment, all that fun stuff. But also, later on that day, and do I have the time in front of me? I thought I did. Maybe I did. Hold on a second. So, at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, I'll be on The Corner with Frosted Glass. So, looking forward to that as well. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society link at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Very much appreciated. If you have thoughts on the show yourself, please leave them in the comments below. Or you can always join the Discord server. Would you like to join the Discord server? Well, I'd like to invite you to join the Discord server. Do I have a link to the Discord server pre-prepared? Of course I don't. But do I now? I do now. And here it is. In the chat, there's a link to the Discord server. Click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot. Actually watch the stream and thus earn the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is Morc and Hardy. Just say hello, Morc and Hardy, and I'll know that you watched the show. Everybody, appreciate your time. Leave a like on the way out if you haven't already. Hit a like and a subscribe if you're not subscribed. Share if you like to share, because sharing is caring. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. I hope your Thursday, Friday, and weekend ahead of you are all well. I hope you're safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.